And we slided a little bit more, and instead of seeing things, we asked this time Cristina to speak about how she worked on the topic we will speak about. So it will be her aim and not the way we perceived it. So it's also another way to work, and I'm very, very glad to address this way of working. The topic we chose for this program this session is how the sensible manifest in performances, but it can be also installations, of course. So how the sensible manifests on performances. For that, I've just forgot important thing. We all presented very briefly to Marica and Zuzana, but I guess it's important for you to know very briefly, who is Marica, and I will, Marica, let you present yourself a little bit more. But Marica, you're an interdisciplinary artist. You're a performer, you're a video maker, photographer. You are, and this is one of the reasons why you are invited today, because we are also collaborating with you as a chef editor of the Repère Cahiers de Danse, which is a French review on dance, which is linked to the Center of Choreographic Development of Vitry-la Briqueterie. Which is a very interesting review, and I really, really, really recommend you to see, even if you don't completely understand French. There are things which are also online and in English, tremendously interesting. But you're also the director of the International Festival Video Dance in Bourgogne, so linking dance and video. So yes, a very rich experience. And Zuzana, who is for Sesta organizing the Klub, čtení, tance, but also the choreographic forum, but also the blog. You are also multi, you have a multi hat as an artist. You are a dance maker, but you're also a visual artist. You are still, you travel a lot in a lot of artistic and theoretical residency all over the world, and you're working with Meat Factory for the residency program, and so on. So you have also a very good theoretical approach, and thank you very much for organizing the whole thing. So Marica, if you want to add some words about yourself, it will be very nice, and then Zuzana, if you want to add something about yourself, it will be very nice.
Well, thank you, Marie, and hello, everyone. I just want to thank first Zuzana and Marie for the invitation to be here tonight. It's really nice to see you. I would prefer to be in beautiful Prague with all of you, but for now, Zoom will have to do. So thank you for being here. I'm really looking forward to the discussion tonight. I don't think I need to add anything. Marie was very thorough. I'm really interested in interdisciplinary collaborations, the sort of frontier between research in the traditional sense and performance practice, and the way that those two overlap, and how we also create new pathways that address performance practices and research. I do have also a special interest in images, particularly moving images. And in this regard, I'm really interested in expanding notions of choreography, and that is how choreographic practices go out into the world and interact with other media, but not necessarily in a way that resembles traditional stage dance. So in this regard, I'm really interested in how choreographic practices affect camera work, editing practices, work with objects. But really, there's very little that doesn't interest me, and I'd rather hear and discuss with you than talk about myself. So let's just hear back from Zuzana.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marie, also for the introduction. I also don't think I have to add much to saying who I am, but I'm very glad to actually be part of that, and that we managed like throughout this year to do this dance reading club. And I'm really looking forward that we kind of are really building a community, because this is kind of like also my interest, like in the collaborative practices and like the making the collective. And this is something that I find like as one of the like the most important thing that since actually quarantine started, we started to meet. And that also like, even though it's really pity that we are not live together, but that we are still meeting here and can like dwell more into like each other researches or like mode of doing things and art and thoughts around which are connected like also to theory. So maybe now I would like I
guess we can go back to the title. So the theme we will work on today. So it's how the sensible manifests in performance, how we perceive it, how the artists are framing their work in a way that the audience can sense, can be more aware of the sensibility of the senses of all this topic about, all what is about the feeling. Okay. I guess it can be very useful to begin by each of us putting in word what is for us sensible. So just to define each of us, to collect all our definitions and to have a common definitions. And then after we will ask Marica to give something perhaps more theoretical, but first of all, I guess it's to gather all our way of interpreting this word. For now, I'm just following how each image is on board. So if I ask somebody, it's just because you are the following, there's absolutely no hierarchy at all. But the first on my screen is Bara. So Bara, if you could begin.
Oh, I will repeat the question, Maria, first.
Your definition of sensible.
Definition of sensible, yeah.
Yes, your definition of sensible.
There is something like fragility for me, which I'm not sure in which sense. If it's because it's like in which direction it goes. Like if it's sensible towards me as an artist or sensible towards the audience as somebody who perceives it. So this would be like quite the question in this, because I think like what is sensible for me, for like artists, it can be different for the audience already. So this kind of balance, and maybe the most that it's not like attacking, or it would be something that I can read it with as audience. I can read it as something what I can, but also I don't have to. So it's more like an offer for me.
Thank you. Hannah.
To be sensible for me, I think it's related for me with to hear someone or to be empathetic.
Empathy, yes. Petr?
It's a complicated concept, first of all. And I think that sensible means like, there is a sense, like a you know, like eyes and ears, you know, hearing and seeing. There's a something that is perceptible also for me, which has some kind of role in dance, for sure. And one of the questions that's interesting for me is what's actually perceptible from the movement on the dance stage. What of it is perceptible and what of it is not, and what of it is sensible, actually, by which I mean you can feel it, but not see it.
Thank you. Daniela, chcete mluvit česky?
Ne.
Nebo já to překládáme?
Marie, já děkuji, že jsem do toho mohla vstoupit.
Ano.
Já jsem potřebovala jenom prostě ochutnat tu atmosféru online vysílání. Já za chvilku se odpojím.
Dobře, jak chcete, ale buďte vítána.
Děkuju.
Dobře, a pokud náhodou chcete zůstat s námi a taky se vyjádřit, neváhejte to dělat ve češtině, budeme to překládat. Fakt budete vítána.
Děkuji.
Prosím. Také, Tereza.
Sorry. With Hanka, it's Tomáš there. Your name is Tomáš?
Tomáš is down.
Tomáš is with Hanka in the room.
No, it's Petr.
Petr, sorry. So I was thinking about this sensible the moment you said it. And I see it the similar way as Petr does. My daughter is coming. And I actually see there the senses. So we have like 5 senses, and what senses can be maybe pulled up or out via dance and in the audience and in the dancer. And there are maybe obviously some senses that are not that attractive, and that is taste or touch, perhaps. So for me, the sensible, the sensible evokes the senses that we are able to spot, feel, notice, experience. That's it for me.
Thank you. Cristina.
I like this word in English, sensible, because I think when we translate it from other words, like from other languages, in Spanish in my case, sensible in English doesn't mean related to the senses, but it's like having a good judgment of things, or like not being crazy in a way, you know. And then there's this other word, sensitive, which is relating to the senses. And I really like that we're talking about sensible, in the sense that for me, the experience that we have in the world, the things that connect us to the world, are always traveling through our senses. So it is what we perceive, how some of you already mentioned, it's what we perceive and how we perceive it places us in the world. And sometimes when you're working with the manipulation of this, like that you're guiding someone else's senses in an experience, you don't have enough care, or, you know, like you could be guiding in some chaotic way, which is not sensitive, that then it can feel like something is aggressive or not inviting, or in the experience, because there is no like enough sensibility and sensitivity to guide it. So I really like these two words, how they kind of come together in the work with the body and guiding the body through the experience, be it the audience's body or our own bodies as dancers in the space. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Cristina. And I might say that we were preparing this thing, and it's linked to what you said. In fact, in French, and Marica is a lot working and thinking in French very often. And it was very difficult to translate properly our original idea. And what is marvelous with the translation is that it opened up other interpretation of the same thing. And when we prepared that, it was the word sensible in French. And sensible is something which is sensitive, sensible, which is working on the senses in the way the senses are revealing what you feel, but another way which is also linked to the imagination. So when you just work on this with the translation, you open up the meaning of the word in an incredible way. So yes, welcome to Spanish, French, English, Czech. It's beautiful. Tomáš.
Okay, two things comes to my mind, just like association, and one was the atmosphere somehow. That sounds very important. And the other thing is giving a space of somebody or something, or so there was two things comes to my mind.
Thank you. Zuzana? Lapsztonska?
Yeah, I see.
Hello.
Yes. Hi. So for me, I associate it with the empathy, I guess, most. And I don't know why, but it's very just like, I would call it random thought. I connected even with the word sharing or something like this. I can, yeah, sharing.
Empathy and sharing.
Mm. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's harder to explain the word sharing. I would have to like think about it like longer, but it came to my mind that it could be for me related to that word. So I will leave it like that, but it was just natural word which came to me.
If I sum up what we all said, just to remind you, just put took out one word of what you said. So we are interpreting this word which is something which speaks about fragility and possession, empathy, which speaks about the five senses, about feeling. There is something about experience. Sensible is speaking about experience. There is something about the right middle, something which is not chaotic, something which has rules. You were speaking about something that gives an atmosphere and which is giving space, and it's about sharing. So just gluing all this, makes the beginning of a definition, and it will be marvelous if you could give some other ways of defining it, Marica.
I love what Cristina said about language, because indeed, when we were planning this evening, we were working across 3 languages discussing the translation of this term. And I think it's a really important reminder of how much our perception is formed by the language in which we're using and the language that we are hearing, experiencing. So we had an interesting discussion about that. And one thing that I wanted to raise as a native English speaker is that the contemporary usage of the word sensible is totally different from this artistic, philosophical idea of the sensible. So the average English speaker would know the definition that Cristina referred to, which is sensible as something that's very practical, that's very functional. We talk about a sensible decision, meaning the one that is thought out, that's very practical, or an object that's sensible because it has a function. So if you had the choice between buying a really fun dress that maybe you only wear once a year at a party and another dress that you could wear every day and was very useful, that would be the sensible choice, but not necessarily the fun choice. But today we're especially talking about an older concept of sensible. But if anyone is a linguistics nerd like myself, we can have a conversation later about why it is that we came to have this present usage of sensible as the practical choice. But that's probably another discussion we could spend a whole evening on. So today we really wanted to discuss the philosophical concept of the sensible. The earliest use that we know of, to our knowledge, is Plato's idea of the senses, which quite simply is the perception of the world through our senses. But we don't want to stick with Plato because, of course, he created a dichotomy between the world of the senses, which he saw as inferior from the world of ideas. You probably know the famous allegory of the cave, where people in the cave see shadows. So he really thinks that in Plato's thought, the sensible is really inferior. It's a shadow of the idea of the conceptual world, logos or knowledge. But today, what's really interesting in artistic and philosophical thought is that after centuries of work on this question of the sensible, we've come to a much more, I think, interesting understanding of the term, with new ideas that really inspire different branches of thought about the sensible. So yes, the world perceived through the senses, but this can also extend to the world of the imagination, to the emotional inner life of someone related to perception. And just briefly, I'm not here to give a theoretical philosophical course, because what I love about the sensible is that regardless of your field of research, it's universal, meaning that we can all talk about art through this idea of the sensible. It's a way to experience art, to discuss art, to analyze art. And we don't need to have the history or theoretical aspect unless we appreciate that and find it enriching. But just to give you a few key moments in history, so to understand how we came to this moment where we have this broader understanding of the sensible and how we've come to see it as something positive in the art world, I just wanted to mention that there was a major turning point in the 18th and 19th centuries. In Western philosophy, I would trace this especially to the work of Friedrich Schiller, who was very much at the forefront of developing thoughts about aesthetics. But for him, this was an emancipation from theoretical thought. For him to have an aesthetic experience meant to really have an emotional experience in our world, to not be disconnected, to be a part of something. So here we really arrive at this idea very early on of art as experience. In the 19th century, we also have Hegel, who talks a lot about the sensible as an unveiling, meaning that this unveiling is really the heart of the matter. That means that if there's a discourse, if there's an art project, that the sensible is actually the spiritual, the most important element that's going to somehow unveil itself to the person who experiences the work. So once again, at this point, 18th, 19th century thinkers, we really start to come to a more positive understanding of the word sensible. We're no longer tied to this very hierarchical dichotomy between the world of ideas and knowledge and the world of the sensible. Unfortunately, there are still people, I think, who fall into this dichotomy, but I think there are many, many thinkers and artists who have taken great distance with this dichotomy. And for the better, because I think today what we're seeing are artists and thinkers who really see that the sensible in itself can contain ideas, discourses, in addition to being a way of sharing, of understanding, so that actually the sensible is proposing something in and of itself. So once again, that's in contrast to just, for example, using it as a way to analyze a work of art, which I think is also really valuable. And as I understand it tonight, we're speaking both about the role of the artist and how they see the sensible and perhaps their intention of transmitting the sensible, as well as the way that an audience receives the sensible, how they receive the work of art, how they talk about the work of art, and perhaps even analyze the work of art. I mention that simply because in dance and live performance, we've really inherited a model of analysis that is largely coming from visual art history, and that is to focus on the formal compositional elements of the performance, looking at shapes, depth of the stage, formations, etc. But people in dance, of course, are very interested in states of the body, of kinesthetic empathy, how we transmit feelings and experiences of the body. So that isn't to denigrate the visual, because the visual is also generating very interesting thought in this realm. For example, Laura Marks is an artist and a theorist who's written a wonderful book about haptics. So haptics that's the science and technology of how we learn and experience through touch. But in her book, she's arguing that there is such a thing as haptic visuality. Today, in our visual society, where we're surrounded by images, she argues that by seeing images, the eye actually stand in memories, body, perhaps the memory of an odor. Here I'm thinking, of course, of Proust in his famous Madeleine. So in the same way that a word might evoke this memory, she argues that images too can expand to these other sensorial realms and trigger experiences. And you might be asking yourself, why is it that it's important to study these outside the realm of simply studying the aesthetic ways in which these operate? And this is just a very personal thought on my part, but I think that it's a really, really beautiful thing to be able to expand the realm of the senses, to expand our perception. I think that when we expand perception, we create empathy, we expand our realm of empathy, we expand the way that we imagine the space, our place in the world, how we relate to others. And I think that the sensible is the most powerful tool that we have at our disposal to do that. So I just wanted to conclude this brief intro with a book that I find really inspiring from 1934 that was written by John Dewey. And he talks about the aesthetics, as the experience of art. So for him, the artistic is the creation process when the artist is making the project. and aesthetics would be the experience that the viewer or the audience has of the work. And I really like what he says. He says to emphasize what is aesthetic about an experience is not to highlight what is apolitical or impractical or otherwise marginal about that experience. Instead, it is to emphasize in what ways that experience as aesthetic is a manifestation, a record, a celebration of the life of a civilization, a means for promoting its development, and insofar as that aesthetic experience relates to the kinds of experiences had in general, it is the ultimate judgment upon the quality of a civilization. So those are just a few notes. I really don't want to take up too much time because once again, this has inspired so many branches of thought and philosophy and critical discourse in art making. We could spend days, weeks studying the different branches, but now I think what's really interesting again is to come back to the idea that this experience is universal, although different for everyone. We all have some sort of sensorial perception of a work of art. And that means that every single one of us has something to contribute to a discussion. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you very much, Marica. Yeah, there's a lot of things which we still have in the head. And I guess perhaps some of you have questions to what Marica already said before going to the examples we will work on. Bara, Hanna, Petra, Teresa, Zuzana, Tomáš, Cristina, Zuzana. No? Okay. So keeping that in mind, I would ask you, Cristina, and then I will let Zuzana moderate the rest of the discussion to explain to us what was the project you presented in the festival 4 Days in Motions. Some of you saw the performance. No one. So. I couldn't because it's a one-to-one performance and I registered too late. So next time, Cristina, I swear, because it seems tremendously interesting. And just to speak about that through the way you were framing this question of perception for the audience. So what was your dramaturgy toward sensation? Yes.
Okay. There are so many things that I would like to tell you, and there's a short time. I thought I would share with you like six, seven minutes of a video that we did before, in which we show some images of the performance, and there is this kind of interview where I'm explaining some things. And I really think it's a kind of the best way to introduce you to the project because it's difficult to explain it without these images. So if you agree, I would like to play this in sharing my screen. And then I will go back to the dramaturgy part of it. Yeah? Cool. So I'm going to share my screen. And I hope it's not with too much delay.
We developed Insider during 1 year. We were a team of 4 women from different nationalities, visual artists and theater makers. And we were collaborating with the Czech art platform Teren. Insider is a performance for one audience member that navigates between physical and virtual realities. We use a VR headset. We play this 360 degrees video. You are surrounded by this environment. And we have a second element, which is actions and interactions with objects that occur in the place, in the room, in real life. Usually in VR, you are really engaged with what you see, and you forget a little bit about your body. But in the combination that we're working with, it happens actually the opposite thing.
Okay, I'm gonna take your left hand. This is a petrified squid. So they paired all the shells to be able to count how many there were.
We are working with the dissociation of touch and sight. So what you see is almost what you touch, but not quite. And this changes the way that you perceive a reality. So in a way, we are forcing you to integrate these two realities into one experience.
You're gonna hold this?
We do all this through very simple objects, like from everyday life. Sometimes we replicate these found objects in nature. So we are doubling the reality also in this tactile level.
I'm gonna take your left hand. Can you hold it?
Everybody knows wearing the VR that what you see is not the reality. That's kind of obvious, but in the way that we are using the things, you use your sense of touch to confirm what is real, including the taste of things. There are these other moments of extreme dissociation that are interesting, in which what you see is totally not what you're touching. So you need to make an effort to understand and orient yourself in the physical reality. And people react to this very differently. Each viewer chooses how to react to all these questions and investigate these questions. So in the end, everybody has quite different experience. Each guest has a performer. The performer takes care of this person all the time. And then at some point, we put these two guests together so they interact with each other. And this has many different results. take this. Kea?
Hi.
Hi. Hey, we are recording.
Okay, sorry. I think I'm going to stop it there because of the time. But I thought that it was easier to see what the performance is like with this video. The last part of the video was just like talking about the reactions of people. But I actually, if you are curious about that, I can also share with you a couple of written testimonies that people have sent to us, because in the video we just mentioned a few things. Yeah, I guess now, I mean, I have a lot of material I can share about the dramaturgy and the way of thinking.
Yes, please.
But I don't know if you want maybe to start with some questions about what you saw or how to do this.
I am very sorry that I couldn't visit this performance because I planned to go there, and I'm so excited that you are showing us this.
Yes, it really feels so different. Like, I mean, I think we all can have an idea of what's going on in there, but yeah, that's the problem with this kind of works, that it's like the experience is so subjective that it's difficult to explain it like this. But it will be again in Prague, so I hope that then yeah, we can meet. Maybe not this year, but later on.
May I ask one thing?
Mm-hmm.
Was there anybody who was feeling very uncomfortable during this and was maybe even interrupted it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Or was feeling uncomfortable? Must be very confusing. I really like the way it.
Yes, it is very confusing. Okay, so there in the process when we were making it, there was a friend of mine that came to, you know, like test subject. We invited people to try things, and this friend of mine, she couldn't bear it. Like, she had it like 2 minutes and then she took it off, and she said that she felt like sick, like that she was losing the balance, her balance, and somehow that I think it was combined with a lot of anxiety of feeling that, so it was impossible to do anything further. And then during the performances, there haven't been anybody that would not finish the performance. There was a person who said that she had a headache, and we said, okay, so let's stop. And then she said, no, I'm gonna close my eyes for a little bit and then I want to continue. So she wouldn't stop, although she had the headache. And then later on that evening, we knew, because a friend of a friend, you know, told us that she still had that headache for the rest of the day. So that probably was the situation where it was very, and I mean, this technology is super aggressive, especially, you know, if people is wearing glasses, and, you know, you can have a headache just to have the screen so close to you. And basically you have this screen close to you, like 45 minutes long. And then you have it in a 360 degrees. So you are enclosed in this space, and that can somehow affect your sense of balance. But it never happened like, you know, it's something you get used to it, like in the first minutes. So these are the, and then of course there can be also people who are uncomfortable with it, but it's not about the senses, but it's something more psychological, because what we have is a video that it's not responding to you. It's a video which is fixed. And in this video, you decide if you want to follow the hands in the video or if you want to do your own research. And
yeah, I wanted to ask about how people reacted to make some action which was fixed.
Yes. Yeah, this is also a very interesting point, because some people really appreciate to have this guideline, because somehow you can stop making decisions and you're just there fully aware of the sensations and these games of perception, and you're just taken by the hand, let's say. And some people appreciate that very much, and some mention it more like a meditative situation in which they try to be together with the hands that are doing the action as much as they can. And somehow that creates some sort of focus of, I don't know, well, I was a dancer some decades ago, and I remember those references of being in an improvisation, and you find this kind of connection with another person where you let the boundary between that person and you is a little bit blurred, and you have that flow, and that is very meditative. And I think that happens a little bit with the video and like the video hands and your hands. And it's not that you feel that, oh my God, these hands are mine, the video hands are mine. It never happens that this is like a clear confusion that you know, you're very aware that you are separated from those hands. But there are some moments where something happens, and the nearness to the experience of those hands is like really strong. And I think that that is also kind of fulfilling. Some people have expressed that following the hands is fulfilling in that sense, somehow like this synchronicity. Or and for other people, following is super annoying, because they feel like, why should I follow? I want to do my thing. And you can see that they are struggling with, I want another option, I want, and it's also interesting to see how then they navigate that, because then they start to find options in real time. So they stand up from the chair, they start to walk around, and we just need to kind of protect them really fast so they don't, you know, get hurt or something in the space. So yes, it has a level of psychology in that sense, because you are negotiating with yourself a lot during the whole performance.
Thank you.
I would go back to the question of how you framed the experience. What are the dramaturgical tools you used to frame the experience and to take out for the audience or for you as an artist the substance of it?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just briefly, I would like to mention that it's already for a couple of, or like more than a decade, that I am trying to find how to translate my experience as a dancer into this kind of designing experiences. So instead of being a choreographer that thinks about the space in like the outer space and the bodies how they have to move in that space. I like to think that it's possible to choreograph what a body will feel. So it's more like, as a dancer, sometimes you have these references. Like, you know that at certain point you need to breathe in certain way, so you get this certain connection in the body, so then you can do that specific movement. So there's a lot of, it's like an inner score that you make for yourself, so you can reach that state. It's not about some concrete specific thing, but it's more a state of attention, a state of perception. And then I was thinking that I want to do that, but not for a dancer that will be the medium for another person to see it, but I wanted to do that for the audience themselves. And then this concept started to develop as like choreographies for inner use. That sounds a little bit medical, or I don't know how, it's a bit funny, but it does explain to like this concept clearly for me, because basically I'm making scores through situations like defining objects, defining images, defining media that will guide the attention and the perception of the person into a state of confusion, or a state in which the tactile is way more important than the visual, or the visual will be the thing that guides your attention, and so on. So I have done several works like that based on sound and video and all the things. And I would say this one is the peak of that concept. And maybe now I will go to the dramaturgical side of it by sharing some drawings that I hope they can express what this is for me. So I was thinking about the body, the limits of the body as a box, as a cube, like, you know, like the limits of our skin as a cube. And how the name of the project is The Insider. And I'm writing here an intrusion in your perception, meaning this possibility to choreograph your perception somehow, to guide your perception. And then this other phrase here, how the other's experience fit in my own experience. So the first principle of this thing was questioning the media itself. What does this VR does to my body and to my sense of being present? And I was thinking the body as this concrete object, like a cube, let's say, is my body. And all these other like deformed cubes or incomplete cubes are a little bit the proposal of these virtual bodies that somehow are there, that can be inhabited by my body or not, and that they are like not so concrete and so present. So the initial research started there, like what happens if I try to feel the experience of someone else. And yes, of course, this is very guided by the thought of empathy, but later on I totally abandoned it, and I hope there is time to tell you why. Yes, and this is another thing that was like feeding a lot the understanding of how to work with it. Oh, sorry, I'm doing it the wrong way. Okay. I was reading a lot, a specific author on phenomenology. And basically this idea of being in the place of other person, and that's like being in the shoes of another person, is a common way of understanding empathy. And somehow the discourse is that you will become closer to this person if you understand that, like if you're near to that person. And this man is a phenomenologist, Matthew Radcliffe. And I really start to like his way of thinking, because basically he's saying this is a really big misunderstanding of what empathy is, because you will never know what that other person is feeling. And that became like so much more relevant for me living in a country that it's not my country, and, you know, dealing with all these differences and these efforts of understanding the other and so on. So basically we read several of those essays and we put together this thing. And he's talking about you and your world and how you relate to your world. And there's a lot that he writes about touch as the sense that somehow creates bonding to the world, not only physically, but also psychologically. So that it's that emotional life that Marica was mentioning, how the sense of touch is, he has a concept that it's background touch, that is somehow the feeling that you are contained or received in the place where you are, and therefore you feel situated in the world and connected to the world. And there is also the possibility that this sense of being in the world is weak, and you feel depressed and you feel like you want to escape the world and not have any contact with it. So then this is very much connected to the sense of touch and being hosted by the reality that you inhabit. And then me in the world is the possibility of confirming reality. So that means that you are in the world, but if you change something, if you activate something, you need that reality to react to you. So when the reality reacts to you, you have some certain power over that reality. Then you know you exist also for that external place, and that also gives you the sense of connection to the place. And it's so funny how these things connected to the virtual reality, because, you know, virtual reality most of the times is like these games or like, well, it's a cliche, but it's also true that there's an abundant amount of games in which you are confronted to these spaces where they react to you, but everything is fast and very potent visually, and, you know, like a little bit futuristic and so on. And our video is not interactive, so the video is not responding to you. So I think that in the beginning I thought that will be a problem, because then it's something that I thought, okay, maybe you will not be so engaged with this because this reality is not reacting to you. But actually it did work. It was not a problem, because there was a physical part of it that was reacting to you. And then there are all these other levels of me in our world, like you and the other, and me in your world. Okay, this is very specific. Maybe I should just jump to the conclusion because the time. But the conclusion is that there is no way I can understand your world, because I don't have your background. Even if you tell me the things and I imagine them, I will never, ever really know. But I can understand how my world changes because of you. And this was the point for me that was the most interesting, and that made me understand why this whole overlap of bodies, virtual and real, made sense to me. Because it is because of the presence of the virtual body that you can connect even more to your own body, because you see all those differences, because you need to really be alert with the taste, with the touch, to actually understand what is your experience and what is the experience of the virtual body. So this is a reference on the, or where the dramaturgy was taking some inspiration. Maybe I stop sharing this so we can. Yes, and well, the final point in dramaturgy was that basically it was the first time that I had to work with two lines that were meeting in such a complicated and confusing way that sometimes we were completely lost in the rehearsals, because, you know, we were planning the virtual reality and the in real life reality in a parallel way. So sometimes in the video, these will meet or they will oppose. So the confusion can happen. If these encounters didn't happen, then basically you would feel like, okay, this experience is the experience of the video. I'm not so connected to it with my senses. So basically how to make that coexist was really complicated because it had so many levels, and sometimes we will be rehearsing and saying, yes, no, but you have to bring the object here in this way and these minimal details. And then there was a huge misunderstanding of 1 hour because someone was talking about that version in the virtual level, another one was talking about that version in the real level. So it was madness. And in the end, we end up with, I don't have it scanned, but we end up with some system in which we have these parallel scripts. And then that helped us to organize everything and film the last version of it. So yeah, basically the dramaturgy is based on presentation of the possibility that you can wear these experiences of other people. So when you arrive in the performance and you wear the headset, the first thing that you see is an empty chair and the table at the forest. And it seems that you're sitting at the table because the way it's filmed, but there is nobody. Then someone comes and occupies the place where you are supposed to be. So suddenly you acquire these two hands. And you stay with this person for a long time, experimenting with different objects. And all this period, like the dramaturgy is focused on bringing you or offering you the possibility to compare yourself or your own experience with someone else's experience, and to match these experiences sometimes, get confused about it or not. And then after this period, the hands that you've been wearing, they start to change. So then you wear different hands and you are exposed to other materials and the eating. And by the end of the performance, the very, very end, after you interacted with this other person that's wearing the oculus, so that it's the other guest that in the performance, you end up with an empty chair for a while. So you lose your body in the virtual reality, you dematerialize in a way. And I think that this is a very, like, the people who notice that gets really attached to that moment, because after feeling so many things in your body during the performance, suddenly you look down and you don't have legs, you don't have a chest, you don't have hands, there's an empty chair. And I think that is like creating some sort of, it's like a rehearsal of our imagination of what would this be if you actually can leave your body. And some people have compared this to this phenomenon of projections where, this after death experiences that you leave the body, you can see it from above. I mean, it's not that the people go through that shock, but you have that association and that a sensation connected to that. So that's the end of the journey, that you end up dematerialized, and then you have a moment to rest in the space. You lay down in the ground, and then we put a lavanda pillow in your eyes to refresh your forehead because it has been so intense and hot, the machine. And you slowly come back to your senses as you know them or as we understand them normally. So there are many lines in the construction of this, but this one is the main narrative of the encounter. Yeah.
Cristina, could you please repeat the name of the author of the book on phenomenology?
Sure.
Manuel.
Matthew Radcliffe. I can write it in the chat. It's a theory that it's the feeling of being. Radcliffe. I think it goes with an E in the end. The feeling of being. But he has a lot of essays in this academia website that are, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Cristina, thanks a lot for yeah, like this super detail and like rich description. And I just wanted to like, because it made me think of the artist Lisa Clark. I can imagine that you are totally familiar with her. I actually never saw her work like live, but I just read about it. But somehow it really reminds me like also the thing, like because she was doing this, she was creating these objects which are actually like used as a her therapeutical work. So she would like, it was also this like performance one-to-one, or like performance, like she would have somebody coming, and then she was like, I remember these glasses, like the mirrors where like also like your body, state of the body was changing like through that object. And now it's interesting that you are bringing these like to the, with the Oculus, like to the virtual reality, which is like even more like a augmented yeah, world.
Yes, I like a lot her contraptions to create relationships between persons, and it's a very mechanical way of achieving it. This performance Insider is part of a series of performances I started like a decade ago, and the series name is The Stranger Gets a Gift, and it's one-to-one performances. And I really dislike participatory theater, and you know, like I feel a lot of violence in this demand of participation. But then in this project I explored ways on how to choreograph the elements around, so that suddenly you can find yourself in a space that is comfortable to be in, and that you can experience your intimacy, you know, either be it your senses, your space, like I don't know, like your sense of time, or how the time is passing. Things that are very intimate and that are not used in a confrontative way, but it's more like the performance is a device for you to use, and you can go as deep as you want on it or not. So that it does function, even if it's like this technology, more technological things involved in it. It does function as a contraption that is used as these contraptions of Ligia. I just have to say that in her work, she was completely focused on the therapeutic side of it. And this is definitely not the, you know, because also when you think about interactions with that intimacy, you're thinking about something very psychological and not necessarily. And I am fascinated by that possibility that you can share something very, very deep and very yours without the need to make it psychological or making it a big deal between you and the other person. So actually, a stranger is the best person with whom you can actually sometimes share these things. And yeah. In this performance, the relationship with them, like if you think of being a performer in this performance, the choreography you need to learn is the choreography of care. You need to take care that the towel or the water you will use is not too hot. You need to take care that, okay, in this era, everything is disinfected. You need to take care to reach the person on time. You need to take care to touch the person in a firm way, but not in an intrusive way. You need to take care of, you know, like you need to take care of the senses of the person, like every detail. And that's basically the choreography you need to learn. And of course, to be very, very reactive to, in the way of empathy, in the sense of, if you see that someone is struggling, then you just help this person. You have to be completely open to the reactions. So that's the kind of relationship that it is established. Mm-hmm.
So it happens that I'm reading now something which is linked to some steps of your work, which is Quixote from Salam Rushdie. And it's really about how something which is not the real personage, the real person, is thinking about his own reality. It's really, you never know what is the reality, and people are how the non-real people are thinking about their existence, previous existence, actually existence, and so on. It's really like those Russian puppets when you have one thing inside, but you never know what is the reality and what is the fiction. So I guess it's something that can really nourish your work. And yeah, I was fascinated hearing you and reading this book at the same time. And I really recommend it. It's very well written. And also your work remind me a lot work of no, I want to speak about him, and his name escaped me. He was doing a performance which was called Smithly Sense, and Pedro Powell's, yes. But he had a so-called performance. It was on stage, so duet and so on, clear, not normal frame. But parallel to that, to prepare the audience to be part of it, it was his way of addressing the activation of audience. There were a one-to-one workshop, which was lasting for or 15 minutes or an hour, depending on the people, in which everyone was experimenting all the elements of dance as to be compressed, to jump, to be in the air and all that. And so he brought all the conditions to the audience to really feel what the dancers were going through while dancing. So it's also somebody, I guess, you can speak with, and he did his research with a laboratory for neuroscience sciences. So he was really connected with scientists just to find the proper thing. But for him, this was not a performance, it was a sort of workshop. And something where it leads me to something which is interesting, because what is in your work, something which is about performance. You were speaking about what I can call dispositive, yes, a sort of frames. And how far can we think again about the word performance in your work?
Yes, this is the question of redefining words that are already kind of obsolete. And yes, and yeah, actually, there is this short anecdote. There is a woman curating virtual reality projects. She has like this gallery online. And so we sent her the work, and she said it was wonderful. She loved it. But that she couldn't include it because it looked to her a little bit like an experiment. Like it didn't really seem to be something visually completely, you know, composed and potent, like something that could belong to visual art. Because, well, you know, like in virtual reality, there's a lot of work in creating this kind of very cared aesthetic of how the things look like. And at the same time, it didn't really seem to be a performance, because basically what we offer is a space for you to explore your senses. And it's not really like, you know, there's no narrative on it, but there's also no presenting ourselves as we are performing, because we receive you as this lady in the dentist, you know, that you're going to sit here and I'm going to give you this. Although the focus that we have when we are working is the focus of a performer, we do not present ourselves like that, and the space is not presented like that. So I do think this is still a performance, in the sense that it's something which is designed and has the intention to guide you through a journey. It's something you're going to experience. But yes, it's definitely, it requires to broaden the conception of what a performance is. And but anyhow, it has been easy to find the places still inside the circuit of performance art to show it. Like I cannot say that that we cannot work with it, because it is the place where it belongs, and it has still been, yeah. And then there's something I want to react to your comment of the of this thing of reality being inside of another reality of another reality of another reality. And it's just very briefly, I will show you one photo. This we performed in Pardubice in a shopping mall. So this was fantastic because we have windows all around. So, you know, this person here is in the forest. This person here is in the reality of the performance. This person here is walking, coming out of Vila. You know, I don't know, he's shopping. And this person back here, he's completely on his phone. And this is something that I think it's really connected to the whole spirit of the performance of, you know, how these realities are overlapping and containing us. And in the end, we have the capacity to integrate all of them. And yes, it's like reality is way more challenging than how we describe it and how we take it for granted in a way, no? Marie, can you write on the chat the references that you were sharing, please?
I wanted to say, I live in Pardubice and I missed this performance, which is in the shopping center opposite our house. But I happened to be going to Bila or to the shopping center. And I think from the people outside, the view of you with your headset sitting there and doing something was an experience itself, actually.
Yes, I think so too. It was like really, the space was full of forest environment, like atmosphere, because the floor was completely covered by bark. So, and then we had these projections sometimes with the forest and grass. And yes, I think it for us was extremely interesting. We have a lot of photographs of, you know, of the woman choosing the dress, because right in front of us, there was this store where they were selling the dresses. Mm-hmm. And the reflections in the glass, I don't know, it was really crazy.
You were literally in a shop window.
Yes. Yes, we were on the left side was Trafica. Then there was the hall to go to DM and other things. And then we were right in the staircase to go to down to Bila. And then it was really nice because people would just like, you know, this person maybe walk around and then she stands there and she's staring there and she's asking through the window what's going on. And it was it was like a double eruption of reality, because this person is in the forest, but then suddenly the reality of the person in the mall is completely changed. Like what is happening here, no?
Yeah.
You know, you can see here, like in front of us, there was this store selling these dresses. And yeah.
Yeah. Great. Mm.
Yeah, I would just like, because I'm here also in the role of timekeeper, and we are kind of like in our like original schedule coming a little bit to the end. So I would just like say that maybe we kind of like come to the closing of this session, or like because like we were supposed to like go for the 1.5 hours. But thank you, wow, Cristina, for like super like a great description of the work and like bringing all these notions. But maybe I would still like suggest like if you have some questions, and that we could.
I have a question toward the group. We spoke about just one beautiful element, but just one element. There were not so much time for the others to speak. If anyone have the possibility to stay longer, normally we'd really try to stick to 1 hour and a half. But yes, thanks to the Zoom format, perhaps it was a bit more complicated. But would you agree to go a little bit more on? Is this a possibility? Can you raise your hand like that if yes, and like that if not?
I need to put my daughter to bed, so.
Of course.
Otherwise, I would be happy.
Okay. Do you think it's possible? Susanna will have the beautiful role to do a little summer up, and we all will help her to do a summer up. So send it to you, Teresa, and thank you very much to have been with us. So you will have also the summer up. But I guess I'm very glad to see that so many people want to go on with this, and I'm for it. We prepared, and Susanna prepared also other texts, because now we addressed mainly two very important senses, which is the sense of touch and the sense of the visual sense. We touch also the question of kinesthesia, so it's also this empathy that you have watching something. So in fact, you are moving yourself. You were speaking about this, about the visual, but it's also with the art of touch and movement. It also exists. So we began to touch all these elements, which are also part of the dramaturgy, because it's what we are playing with when you're doing a performance. But I guess that we have a lot with the text that chose Susanna to speak about how we can do a dramaturgy out of sounds, which is also another sense. And perhaps we can end up with this, but to have another element, and then to really go in discussion. So it's my proposal and ending by 10 minutes for Marica, just to sum up all of that and to go back to the theory, for us to go back with something in hands, not only the experience of talking, but also something like a small theoretical sum up. Can we take more half an hour, so 20 minutes, and then 10 minutes for sum up? Is it okay? Baha not? Okay. And receiving the result by email is okay, Baha? Okay.
I'm also recording the whole session, so I can send you the link and then you can like watch.
Maybe before we move on, Petra has so patiently been asking or wanting to say something now for a while. So I just wanted to remind you that I think he has a question or a comment.
Can you hear me? Oh, good. Yeah, patiently. I don't have questions, just a kind of part of my own research I want to kind of share with you, kind of a tangential note, basically. There is one question to all of you that I am curious about. There is a work of Daniel C. Stern or Stern. Is this name familiar for people around dance or thinking about dance? Does it tell you anything, that name? He is or was actually, he was a psychoanalytician, but very, very special psychoanalytician. And he also did what we could call developmental psychology. And there is a book, I have it somewhere on my computer, where he takes the development of a human child. And one of the most interesting parts is the one when he talks about the children that can't speak yet. And just, just to, I can write a reference later on or send it to Susanna, but what's interesting about it, he is basically saying that the child, when it is, the kid that cannot speak yet, is really, really small, has got certain ways how to understand the mother, his or her mother. And basically he is giving some examples, like, for instance, he's talking about a dance that they have together. And this dance consists of, for instance, the way she touches her hair, or the way she unbuttons her blouse, the kind of movements she does around the kid. And they have some kind of a very, very special mutual understanding that's based on rhythms, which means that he is, according to his hypothesis, the child, very, very small child, has an innate ability to translate from one sense to another. Basically, it's multifunctional experience. Actually, the translation of the experience from one sense to another, meaning from touch to visual things and other, it's just voice, etc. It's very important, voice. And it's fascinating. And there is another part to it. Basically, he is saying that we have this innate ability to kind of travel through senses in very, very specific way that it's based on experiments that were done in late 60s and 70s and 80s. And this book is from 90s. And it's really, really interesting. And there is one more theory to it, which says that the kid that cannot speak yet has a very, very special needs, urges, desires. That it has to, that's the task of its moment, basically, be able to somehow communicate with the mother without words, right? And basically through those rhythms. And what this guy, this Daniel C. Stern is saying is that it's not like Piaget would have it, that once you learn to read, to be sensible, I mean now the word in being, the word in the meaning of being rational. Once you learn to put things together and in order, that you somehow lose these urges, these desires of what you had in your mind or heart or wherever the kid had it, while you couldn't speak. And which means that once you become a rational kind of a being, you still have these kind of desires to express yourself without words, without rational kind of way of doing things, but through the, he calls it, contour of affect or feeling. Basically, it's a question of affect that somehow travels through time, and it goes up or down, and it's basically, I know Cristina is also like a visual, she likes painting as well, and it's like a drawing kind of affect, but how it changes through time. And so this is a kind of a tangential. Now I think it's very interesting because he talks about two examples, and it's all from my side. One is the example of the puppet, that it cannot speak and has movements of the body, rhythms of the body, something to express itself. And the second example is contemporary dance. Meaning he's saying that in contemporary dance, this kind of a contour of an affect in a time is exactly what is going on the stage and what is at stake. It's not the feeling, but the way the feeling is modulated in time. Okay, that's I will send you the exact references, just if anyone would be interested in this kind of in these kind of things. I thought it kind of touches what you were what Marica was saying about haptic experience, and also of course what Cristina was talking about. Okay, thank you.
It's really interesting that you talked about this desire to communicate in other non-verbal ways, because it reminds me of this debate in the arts about, do we discuss dance, visual art as a language? And some people are adamantly opposed to that, and other people really embrace that notion. And to sort of tie it in with the reading tonight, it reminds me that we often also talk about people's artistic voice, and voice is very much the subject of the reading that we're going to look at tonight.
Mm-hmm. I will probably just send the, I don't have the reference here, so I have to look it up. So I will just send it through Zuzka. Okay?
I would love to share with you Another reference about an artist working between the real, which is the dancing body, and the abstraction of it, which is painting. I want to speak about the work of Paco de Sina, who did a performance which is called Women, Fresco, Women Watching to the Left, which is including inside the dance piece a drawing which is in fact nothing else than the real impact in space of the movement with its direction and intensity. And the result of it is that you are pushed in something which is in fact four-dimensional, because you're in the three dimension of the reality of the dance. And you are, as an audience, you are putting in the situation that you are really moving with the people. And at the same time, you have the trace of it, which is instantly and which is two-dimensional. I send a link, and I know that Zuzana is prepared to show you something, and I guess it will be very interesting to go on with a discussion with Cristina later on while seeing that, and Marica also.
Yeah, I will play the video.
Yeah, I guess two minutes are largely enough. And this choreographer is also somebody really working on the perception, and his work is about the perception of the in-between and the perception of the aha. Oh, it doesn't seem that, yes, it will be. You can go a little bit further. Zuzana, you can go a little bit further. It will be clearer later on. Yeah, still a bit further. Yes, from now. And it's something that in video you can't see, but while you are sitting in the place you're sitting in front of this, you are really being part of you are part of an experience about the sensation, because of you will see how he's working with the dynamics of the body. It's something which is completely equal. So you're really drawn in a very meditation. You're really in a state of meditation watching that. And thanks to that, you are really able to see the vibration of the in-between. And it's really this experience he wants you to be part of, adding this dimension thing. Yeah, perhaps you can go a little bit earlier, because there it's a bit over, you don't see so much the process. So if you could go a bit earlier, Zuzana. Thank you very much. Good to see, yes. Yeah. So what you see, the traces of movement that were already performed. Scan the video. Is adding something which stays in this piece. That's working. So you see the link which is created, yes, how the drawing is changing. So I guess, yeah, is probably enough. So it's definitely a more traditional way of thinking about what is a performance than from your experience, Cristina. But yeah, so I wanted to propose that, to go perhaps deeper about how to frame the senses and sensibility.
It's interesting that the work you are sharing, Marie, is called actually, how is it? Fresque, femme regardant à gauche.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the lady, or it's a woman looking at on the left, and this somehow like brings me back also like to the text which we were which was also like the Anne Carson text, which was like one of the references where I actually like find interesting like what Marica already mentioned, like the artistic voice, or like what she develops, also like the voice one as like a sonoric quality, or like the voice which where she develops like the female voice, like she goes somehow like also into the history, like coming to like mentioning examples of like Greek dramas or like poets, and how the female voice is actually like perceived as something monstrous, or like something almost disgusting. And then she goes like later on, like to example also of Gertrude Stein, and how actually Hemingway was like perceiving Gertrude Stein as like, when she started to speak, as something like unbearable. And it's very interesting, like how like throughout her writing, she depicts this like the woman as like something which is usually by history or like by male gaze perceived as something like horrifying, or like something which might cause disturbance. And this I find like somehow like also like this was like also the choice of this text to bring a bit like also this kind of like a female gaze on like also the artistic statement, or like actually like speaking that about this voice, like how when you with your work also like speak about the importance of the care work, and like all this, like how you actually like have to really work like with all the like what is going on in the room. It's somehow like then also related to maybe a feminist history, like what this care work actually is, or how is it like related specifically to also like maybe a female domain, like a housework, or a work which is this invisible work. And somehow this I find it interesting also, like in relation to your piece, that a lot of things are happening in this invisible realm, or they are not perceived, or they are perceived, but they are not perceived by the sight. So like it's a lot is coming then to the haptic, or like another sensorial realm, which is like I find interesting, like this link also, that somehow it can be a comment also on this like invisible work, which is done also by which is sometimes like not valued society, or like has to be fight for, like to have the right to somehow empower this voice.
What another link I find between the text you posed us, Susanna, and this performance of Paco de Sina. This title of the performance, Fresco, A Woman Watching to the Left, is a reference to Roman frescoes. So it's really linked to history. It's really linked to our cultural patrimony, and how far all what we're wearing inside from our culture is influencing the way we are perceiving things. And this was very clear also in the text you proposed us, and I really suggest if you could, again, even in the chat, put the reference of this text, Susanna, because it's, as you did also in your own introduction, Marica, it's all about all what we went through as humanity and what we were accumulating in our experience to be able to sense later. So it's also something like we have to work with as dramaturgs, because it's what we are now.
And I think it's really interesting that the word intertextuality often comes up in reference to the sensible. And this reminds me of what Marie was saying, when we have this kind of lineage of cultural heritage that overlaps with contemporary voices, in the sense that Anne Carson, her day job is teaching ancient Greek, and she's very well versed in Greek tragedy and Homeric Odyssey, the Iliad, etc. And these references creep in, but in a very contemporary way. And they're also working with references that have come in between the present and with Greek antiquity. And this idea of intertextuality is another way, I think, of changing our perception, of allowing us to expand our perception, because one reference sparks another. But what I appreciate is that it's not linear, it's very messy. We have a lot of blurred perception happening there. And this reminds me of synesthesia, the idea that one sense is not happening alone at one isolated time, but that you can have these multiple experiences occurring at once. And it will never be the same, of course, for each person. It will be different for everyone. But this kind of reminded me of references that I had prepared for tonight about expanded cinema, because expanded cinema was the movement in the 1960s and 70s that was theorized by Gene Youngblood in 1970. And he wrote a lot about synesthesia. So the notion of expanded cinema came at a time when a lot of new media was entering the art world, video art, computer design. This is the era when video cameras came onto the common market, meaning that anybody with just a bit of extra money could buy a video camera. This is the moment in dance when Merce Cunningham begins to experiment with screen dance filmmaking, because filmmaking through video cameras enters a very public domain and becomes a lot more common. But what we see in both the performing arts and visual arts is that there's a real overlap between the technologies, between text references, and they're really questioning the threshold of where one form of perception begins and another merges. And I was just wondering, if we have time, could we maybe just look at a couple of my images? We don't have to show everything, maybe just A and B. Would that be okay? I wanted to show this image of Vanderbreek's Videodrome, which you may have seen before, but this idea that an image is no longer frontal, that you're completely surrounded by images of movement and performance, and what that does to shift our perception. So it's kind of like if you've been to a modern day IMAX or different cinema presentation formats. But here at this time with expanded cinema, you have real interplay between pre-recorded moving images and also live performance. but also that the audience becomes a part of this experience, that we no longer have this kind of fixed placement with the traditional proscenium arch, and there's no longer, or let's say that there's a blurring between, is the public the performance in terms of what's happening? The distinction is no longer clear. Maybe we can look at the next image. Here we go. So Carolee Scheinman is a really interesting performance artist. And here, once again, you see this kind of installation format where we have both pre-recorded images as well as a live body interacting with them. And that reminds me that we've been talking tonight a lot about augmented reality and virtual reality, but I think it's important to historically situate some of these ideas that I think really came to the forefront in the 1960s and 70s with expanded cinema, where even though we didn't yet have the technology that we have today, this idea of immersion, how we can really expand sensory perception, was very much at the heart of this artistic movement. I just say that because my pet peeve in dance history is when people say, we have this really cool new thing, and as if it just came from nowhere, and they don't know anything about the history and how, even though history isn't linear, certainly history develops and builds on concepts that allow us to create new things, depart from old ones, but history is there. And I think expanded cinema is particularly interesting in regards to this idea of sensory perception. And indeed, it was actually theorized by Jean Youngblood, this idea of synesthesia in relationship to the arts. So again, the possibility to have more than one sensory experience at a time. I know we don't have a lot of time, so we don't have to go through all the images. I just wanted to share a little bit to give some historic background.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm just like checking also the time that now it's 29 or 2010 almost. So maybe we could now go to a wrap up of the whole evening. Or do you have still some questions?
I guess that yes, there are several people who are listening carefully, but they certainly have something also to say. It will be take just a few minutes for Zuzana or Tomáš or Hannah or Petr to speak up. What was for you? Perhaps a question toward you, something that was intriguing you, something that was opening a door with a question mark, or something that rings a bell that is interesting for you.
Maybe I want to ask Cristina about this ethic aspect of her work, because you spoke about care a lot during the performance you do. And because now in the science, and we have a very strong ethical paradigm, and we have to really fulfill a lot of formula papers to be really to really care about people we use as a researcher. So I want to ask you if your project, it's more about this like a research project, like scientific project, or you think it's more art, or you meet somewhere between or what do you think? What do you think your work is? Sorry, my English. Do you understand?
Yes, totally. Yes, yes, thanks for that question. Yes, it's in the beginning of the performance, we have a conversation with the person and we tell the person the things that could go wrong. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you can get dizzy, you might have a headache. So the person is deciding if she wants to go through the performance. At some point, we were thinking they might have to sign something, because if you read the effects of virtual reality headsets, they can be super scary. Mm. And but I mean, those consequences come after maybe several hours of playing the game and so on. But if the person has some specific health condition, or there's these signs of epilepsy or something, this can go really wrong. So we decided we are not gonna make to sign that I don't remember the official name of this, but you know, you release
paper,
you are responsible of yourself. Not in this country. In other countries, perhaps. In the United States, for sure, we would do it. And well, that's one part of it. And the second part is that this started like as a question that has to do with perception. And the question was explored with artistic means. And the result, we thought we were doing a performance, but the result is actually something in between. Because the people, when the performance finishes, the people has a lot to say, or most of them, they have a lot of comments and somehow reflections on how the brain is working and the senses are responding. And there was a neuroscientist coming over to one of the performances, and she was like talking, you know, like super long after the performance, also talking about some treatments in the case of schizophrenia, and you know, all this. So in the point where we are standing now is that this is a tool. Like what we have is, yes, it is a performance, so we can sell it as a performance, but it is a tool. It is a tool to research embodied knowledge. And how we start to do it is that we are asking some specialists that came to the performance to write something from their perspective of like their area of expertise. And we want to accumulate these testimonies, and also we accumulate the testimonies of people that just want to share their experience. And I don't know where does this lead, but I know that this belongs to the world of science and systematization of this, or maybe it looks more like ethnography, perhaps. So it's more like collecting the knowledge produced after this physical experience. And I hope we can collaborate with that one person that came over, either adapting the performance or just using it as it is, or creating something new in the context of these needs in her area. Yes, so it is expanding farther than the life of this is growing in this in-between zone that you mentioned.
Yeah, because I also ask myself how the art and science can meet. And as an artist now in these times, when we really suffer because of COVID and everything, what is happening. So how we can really change our approach to our art and to go to another fields and bring the art there, for example. Or, you know, so what I really saw in your piece, it's this message there, and also this ethical aspect, how you care about the people. It's also for me very political and very beautiful that you mentioned this. So because in science it's really people care about it, that the science is really pure and ethically pure, you know, that it happens, it matters how we behave, how we care about each other. So this what I really see in your piece, that it's really beautiful. Thank you.
I think it's connected to the words that we started with, the sensible and sensitivity. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, as artists, you don't have the authority to take care of that person, right? You need to
exactly
earn trust and to create an environment that feels safe. And because as a scientist or as a doctor, maybe, okay, the institution is already guaranteeing, in theory, no, like guaranteeing that you can trust that process, or, and
but, but also if you are, for example, today also the dancer, very often the choreographer doesn't care about you. The choreographers say, do this, and they don't care you really break your leg or you totally, you know, exhausted or something like that, you know. So this is also really interesting, that the dancers and choreographers doesn't care about each other. They just want to follow their ideas, you know.
Yes. Yeah, I think that still is happening. Yes. Yeah. I just wanted to add something, Marica, thanks for bringing the expanded cinema, because I think that there is also a fascination when you work with the body, to think about the rest of the world as something that it's embodied as well. It's something that you can relate to with your body. And then I think projections, like what it is, expanded cinema, it's like, I think it's something that it's in between material and immaterial, because it's basically light. And then the light needs to meet this body so that you can see what is containing the light. And actually, I have also like a work in expanded video. I don't work with film projectors, but with video projectors. And I think that somehow there is this obsession of finding the body of that thing which is immaterial. Like I also worked with the body as the surface of projection, or the element of intervening that beam of light. And I don't know, I find it a little bit spiritual in this sense, because, you know, there is something that you cannot really grasp with your touch, but at the same time, it's possible to affect it with the presence of your body. And so I think that, yes, definitely this work that we were talking about today is completely feeding from also this principle of how the video, there's an obsession of giving body to these video projections and this light.
That's such a beautiful way of putting it. Thank you. And it also reminds me that we didn't really have the time, but initially I thought to go further back in time, because I think there's an argument to be made for someone like Loie Fuller as the mother of multimedia, and the way that she used her body to become something other, to relate to other bodies, to other forms in nature. But the fact that she had to invent her own colored lights to project onto her body something really powerful that is still inspiring a lot of makers today. And I'm also thinking about this point of origin right around the time when we get cinema in 1895. And we know that there were all these photographic experiments before to capture image, and the idea of the evolution of image. And I'm thinking about Muybridge and Etienne Jules Marais, this idea of representing time and really the evolution of a bodily state, and looking at what happens with the in-between. And it wasn't just like taking a photograph, framing it and putting it on the wall, they were also really thinking about the exhibition format, creating panels that move so that you could have this bodily experience of movement, that it would somehow transmit and create this kind of kinesthetic effect, so that you would really understand how is the body going through this evolution of a handstand like we see in this image. But yeah, I totally agree with this idea of light and the body state. It's a really, really well put.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted also to react on your reference, Marica, and link to the question of Hannah, because it's tremendously interesting to know that Leufeler was aware of the discovery, the scientific discovery of her time, which was how the eye was functioning. So in fact, how technically we were perceiving. And at the same time as, it was at the same time also that the abstraction was named. It was the time where painters were also trying to discover what the light was through senses. So it's also all this Monet and all that. Oh, I don't find my words today, I'm so sorry. Impressioniste. And Leufeler applied it to this perception of the lights in movement. But it's one of the answers to links between the art and science through this perception.
Just a short note when you talk about Leufeler and etc. 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 There is not only science and art, there's also philosophy. Bergson, Andy Bergson, and his relationship of the body and light, and it's actually contrasting the phenomenology kind of point of view, because it's the philosophy that is taking the human body as or human subject as a black or dark screen, which means the opposite of what, you know, kind of an imagination of a mind is somehow throwing light into the dark world. For Bergson, the world was full of light, and our mind is something through which it is possible to see it, but we are the dark and slow and always late kind of being that helps the world to be seen.
Tomasz, you wanted to say something?
Yes, firstly, it's very rich, and it's hard to add something because I think it was open in many different things and directions. And I have a lot of notes, but it is a lot of things. But I just point one thing which stays now with me, and to come back maybe to original question, how sensible manifest on performances. Maybe it's something I like what I think Cristina mentioned about stranger give a gift. It's a performance, I guess, as I understood well. But I mean, I like it as a methodology, or the idea maybe how to, the attitude towards the public maybe, or one of the possibility. And I really like it on the, as you, Cristina, said it really nice that with stranger we can share something very deep, and it's very light in the same time. And maybe as we want to share something in a performance, for example, I want to share something deep, it's interesting to think like I want to share it with a stranger and what it means, because it's also very abstract, but it's in the same time very concrete when you meet someone in the cafe in some other town and suddenly you saying her or him very personal story, or she or he saying to you something personal. And this exchange is it's really great. I mean, I have this experience, and I think many of us has this kind of experience. So this is something which triggered me now, which stays. So thank you also for that, and for the other things. It's a lot of stuff.
There is somebody we can't see, but that perhaps have something to say. Zuzana Laczanska, be free to interfere. You're on mute for the moment, Zuzana, so if you want to speak, you have to unmute. And we are not able to see or to, to know if you wish to say something. So take the chance. Would be nice to hear you. Okay. Cristina, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell Tomas that I was putting in the chat the link to The Stranger Gets a Gift. I mean, it's some, you know, it's one of those things that it's already like 6 years that I don't update. But it's just it's the platform where that hosts all these projects one-to-one, and there is somewhere there is a kind of a manifesto that is speaking about that specific situation of creating these zones, momentary zones of encounter with the other and the exchange of personal material. So if you would be interested, it's there. Just it's really old, but it's there.
I guess that we would ask now, as proposed by Susanna ages ago, and I pulled back to keep talking, but perhaps we have to end, hoping that this is only a beginning of thinking about this topic, and ask now Marica to give a sort of shape to this ending.
Well, I think it was sort of an illustration of the concept we began with, this idea of how we perceive the world through the senses. I think we've each shared a lot of experiences and comments that are very unique, but we've also shared them with others here tonight in a way that each person can adapt and experience it for themselves. And even the format of Zoom is interesting, just seeing the way that we relate to one another in squares. I've been looking at gestures tonight, and that seems quite appropriate given the theme. But I think we've also had a really nice chat looking at very contemporary notions of the sensible. And I think we've really touched on different subjects that show this evolution through time, and also that it's a very complicated subject because we don't all share the same definition of empathy, of perception, or we may be referencing a very specific branch of those studies. So I think it was quite rich, and everyone has a lot of material to think on. And I just wanted to thank you for all the references that you've provided tonight. I took a lot of notes, and that was really rich. So thank you for this exchange, and thank you again for the invitation. I'm so jealous that you have this wonderful book club. I've always dreamed of having a dance reading group here, and it was really nice to participate in this Zoom.
Yeah, thanks a lot to all of you. Thanks a lot, Marica, that you also took part. Thanks a lot also to Cristina that you shared with us the really rich material about your work, not just about the performance, but somehow seeing also the background. That was fascinating. And yeah, thanks also to Hanka, Peter, Tomáš, that you stayed with us until now. Still, and yeah, it was great, very rich. I'm doing also like the recording of the whole session, so I will make a link. I can send you then like to transfer also the link if you are interested, or if you would like to like use it as a material for yourself also. And I will send it also to others who were not here. Yeah, and then we kind of like, Marica, if you are jealous, even better, because like we would like you to be part of it, like also for other sessions, because like I think like also we are planning like then for the next year again, like to continue in this. And also from today's experience, I think it was actually super nice, Cristina, to have you like really inside, like to like speak about that. And this, I think, can also like influence our further trains and yeah, and things. So I hope to see you soon all. And yeah, I wish you kind of like still a very nice evening in this yeah, a bit pandemic atmosphere.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Susanna, for the organization. You did a tremendous work to put all that together, even with 4 days in movement and everything changing all the time. So good job. Thank you very much, Susanna. Thank you to all of you. And I guess that what is happening now is so important. We really have to think and go further together. And the more we can do it, the better it is. We have perhaps, if you go on with doing sessions on Zoom, we have perhaps to have longer sessions, because it seems that it's longer for the discussions. So perhaps we have just to, yes, set a longer time. It will be very nice also if you have any comments about what we did together now to make it more efficient and more near to what you need. Because yeah, if we are in a club, perhaps we can stick to the needs of the club. So, thank you.
Thank you. And
from Prague, from Germany, from France, from Žďár, from wherever. Bye. And be together. Bye.
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 Bye, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Ciao. Have a nice evening.
Thank
Bye.
you.
You too.
Bye, bye, bye. Thank you, thank you, thank you.